The click of the padlock was satisfying, almost musical. Megan's fingers trembled as she stepped back from the storage room door, her wedding ring catching the dim hallway light. Inside, the pounding had already started, fists against metal, her husband's voice calling her name with increasing desperation. She could hear Ashley's softer voice trying to calm him down. Megan checked her phone. 3:17 p.m. She had texted Brian 20 minutes ago. He should be here any minute. She took a steadying breath, wiped the tears from her cheeks, and walked back toward the elevators of the apartment building they all shared. The building where they had lived as neighbors for 3 years. The building where they had hosted dinner parties together, where their children had played together. The pounding grew fainter as she reached the elevator. Her phone buzzed, a text from Brian. Just parked. What's the emergency? 3rd floor storage room, she typed. I'll meet you there. 3 years earlier, Megan and Daniel Walsh had moved into Ridgewood Heights, a mid-rise apartment building on the edge of the city. They had been married for 7 years by then, and their relationship had weathered its share of storms: a miscarriage, Daniel's father's death, Megan's career change from corporate finance to teaching. Through it all, they had remained each other's anchor. The day they moved in, Ashley and Brian Reynolds from apartment 3C had brought over a bottle of wine and a homemade lasagna. Moving as hell, Ashley had said with a warm smile. The last thing you want to worry about is cooking. Over the following months, the couples had grown close. Brian, a construction project manager with a booming laugh and an endless supply of dad jokes, had helped Daniel set up their home gym. Ashley, who ran a small but successful interior design business from home, had offered Megan decorating advice and emotional support when she struggled with her new teaching position. Their friendship had seemed natural, uncomplicated. They went to movies together, took weekend hiking trips, celebrated birthdays and holidays as a makeshift family away from family. When Megan's mother had been diagnosed with cancer the previous year, Ashley had been the first person she called, crying in Ashley's kitchen while Daniel was at work. But 6 months ago, something had shifted. Subtle at first, glances that lasted a beat too long between Daniel and Ashley. Inside jokes Megan wasn't privy to. Daniel working late more often at his architectural firm, sometimes coming home smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't Megan's. You're being paranoid, Megan had told herself repeatedly. They're friends. We're all friends. Then came the text messages. Innocuous on the surface. Questions about dinner plans, updates about a delayed arrival home. But the frequency fell off. When Megan had casually mentioned that Daniel seemed to be texting Ashley a lot, he had become defensive, accusing her of snooping. She's helping me plan your birthday surprise, he had claimed. But her birthday had come and gone, with only a hastily purchased necklace and dinner at their usual restaurant. The suspicion had grown like a cancer in their marriage. Megan had found herself checking Daniel's phone when he was in the shower, watching the way he and Ashley interacted at gatherings, noting how they both seemed to find reasons to leave the room at the same time. She had felt ashamed of her suspicions. Brian and Ashley had become their best friends. Ashley had held Megan's hand through her mother's funeral. They had babysat each other's plants during vacations. This was what jealousy did. It poisoned good things, manufactured problems where none existed. Then, 3 weeks ago, Megan had borrowed Daniel's laptop to grade papers when hers was being repaired. A notification had popped up, a new email from Ashley with the subject line, yesterday. Megan had stared at it, her finger hovering over the mouse pad. She hadn't meant to click it, or at least that's what she told herself later. D. Last night was incredible. I can still feel you. Same time next week? A. Megan had closed the laptop so hard she'd feared she'd broken it. She had sat there in their home office for what felt like hours, unable to move, unable to think beyond that single line of text. When Daniel had come home that evening, she hadn't confronted him. Some primal instinct for self-preservation had kicked in. She needed more than an email that could be explained away. She needed certainty before she blew up her marriage, their friendship, the life they had built. For the next 3 weeks, Megan had lived a double life. On the surface, she was the same Megan, teaching her 5th grade class, having coffee with Ashley, sleeping beside Daniel. Beneath that facade, she had been planning, watching, gathering evidence. She had noticed how Daniel and Ashley always seemed to find time alone together when the couples were at social events. How their apartment's proximity made it easy for quick visits when Brian was at work and Megan was teaching. Most damning of all, Megan had discovered a pattern. Every Tuesday, when Megan had her after-school staff meeting and Brian was reliably at his construction site across town, Daniel would come home early. And Ashley, who worked from home, would be mysteriously unavailable for calls or texts during those same hours. Today was Tuesday. Megan had told the principal she was sick and needed to leave early. She had come home quietly, using her key to enter her apartment without announcing herself. The apartment had been empty, but Daniel's phone was on the kitchen counter. He never went far without it, and his laptop was open on the coffee table. She had checked their building's shared storage room on a hunch. Each tenant had an assigned unit in the basement, but there was also a larger storage space on the third floor, rarely used except during the holidays when people needed to access their decorations. Through the small window in the storage room door, she had seen them. Daniel pressed against Ashley, her leg wrapped around his hip, their mouths hungry for each other. They hadn't noticed Megan watching, hadn't heard her strangled gasp, hadn't seen her back away, fumbling for her phone to text Brian. "Emergency. Come to the apartment now. Use your key to get in if I'm not there." She had waited in the stairwell, watching. When Daniel and Ashley had emerged from the storage room, straightening their clothes and checking the hallway, Megan had held her breath. They had kissed once more, quickly, before heading in opposite directions. Ashley toward her apartment, Daniel toward the elevator, presumably to go home and pretend nothing had happened. Megan had waited until they were gone before approaching the storage room. She knew it locked automatically from the outside, a safety feature to prevent children from being trapped inside. But it could be secured with a padlock as well, for tenants storing valuable items. Megan had her own padlock in her purse. She had bought it weeks ago, not sure what she would use it for, only knowing that it represented control in a situation where she felt increasingly powerless. She had waited until she saw Daniel return to the storage room. He had forgotten his watch, she guessed, and texted Ashley. "Daniel needs your help in the storage room. Emergency." 5 minutes later, they were both inside, and Megan had her padlock in her hand. Now, as the elevator doors opened on the third floor, Megan saw Brian stepping out. His face registered confusion, then alarm as he saw her tear-stained face. "Meg, what happened? Are you hurt?" He rushed toward her, his large hands gentle on her shoulders. Brian had always been like that, physically imposing but emotionally gentle. A contrast to Daniel's lean intensity. "There and there," Megan said, her voice steadier than she had expected. "Who's and where? You're scaring me." His brow furrowed with concern. "Daniel and Ashley. In the storage room." She met his eyes directly. "Together." Brian's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "They've been having an affair. For months, probably." The words felt strange to say aloud after weeks of keeping her suspicions locked inside. "I saw them today, and I locked them in." "You what?" Brian took a step back, shaking his head. "No. There's some misunderstanding. Ashley wouldn't." "I saw them, Brian." Megan pulled out her phone and showed him the email she had forwarded to herself from Daniel's account. "And this isn't the only evidence. Tuesday afternoons, when you're at the Richardson project, and I'm supposed to be at my staff meeting. Check Ashley's texts if you don't believe me." Brian stared at the phone screen, the color draining from his face. His hand, which had been reaching for the device, fell limply to his side. "Jesus Christ." "I'm sorry," Megan whispered, and she meant it. Despite everything, hurting Brian had been the hardest part of her plan. He turned toward the storage room without another word, his shoulders set in a rigid line. Megan followed a few steps behind. As they approached, they could hear the conversation inside. "Could have sworn I locked it from the inside," Daniel was saying. "The handle won't budge." "Try your phone again." Ashley's voice was higher than normal, tight with anxiety. "I told you, I left it at home." "Where's yours?" "In my apartment. I came running when Megan texted that you needed help." There was a pause, then Daniel's voice, suddenly suspicious. Megan texted you? The realization seemed to hit them both at the same time. The banging on the door resumed with renewed vigor. Megan, Daniel shouted. I know you're out there. Open the door. Brian looked at Megan, his face a mask of controlled rage. Open it. She handed him the key to the padlock. With steady hands that betrayed none of the emotion in his eyes, Brian unlocked it and yanked the door open. Daniel and Ashley stood blinking in the sudden light, their expressions morphing from relief to horror as they registered Brian's presence alongside Megan's. Brian, Ashley breathed, her hand instinctively reaching for Daniel before falling away. Her blonde hair was disheveled, her lipstick smudged. Daniel's shirt was misbuttoned. How long? Brian asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Neither answered. Ashley's eyes darted between her husband and her lover, while Daniel stared at the floor. I asked you a question, Brian said, louder now.
How long?
7 months. Daniel finally answered, looking up to face them. It wasn't planned. It just happened. It just happened, Megan repeated, a bitter laugh escaping her. For 7 months? It just kept happening. Ashley took a step forward. Megan, please. We never meant to hurt you. Either of you. Spare me, Megan snapped. You've been in my home. You helped me pick out our anniversary gift for him. She pointed at Daniel, who had the decency to flinch. You held my hand at my mother's funeral while sleeping with my husband. It's not like that, Daniel started. We tried to end it several times. But what? Brian interrupted, his voice thunderous in the confined space. What exactly was so special about screwing my wife that you couldn't stop? Daniel squared his shoulders. Don't act like your marriage was perfect, man. Ashley needed someone who actually listened to her, who valued her beyond. Brian's fist connected with Daniel's jaw before he could finish, sending him staggering back against the storage shelves. Ashley screamed, moving between them as Daniel regained his footing. Stop it, she cried. This isn't helping. Helping? Megan felt a strange calm descend over her. Nothing is going to help this, Ashley. You two made sure of that. Brian shook out his hand, breathing heavily. We should go, he said to Megan. I need to get out of here before I do something I'll regret. Daniel wiped blood from his split lip. So what now? You two ride off into the sunset together? Is that the plan? The implication hung in the air. Megan saw Brian stiffen beside her. We're not you, Megan said coldly. We didn't plan this together. I texted Brian because he deserved to know what I knew. Ashley was crying now, silent tears tracking her mascara down her cheeks. Brian, please. We need to talk about this. Not here. There's nothing to talk about. Brian's voice was hollow. Pack your things. I want you out of the apartment by tomorrow. You can't just throw me out. Where am I supposed to go? Ask your boyfriend, Brian spat. Maybe he'll let you stay in his marital bed. Daniel moved toward Megan, his hand outstretched. Meg, can we please? Don't touch me. Megan stepped back. Don't ever touch me again. An hour later, Megan sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by photographs she had pulled from frames around the home she had shared with Daniel. Pictures of the four of them on a boat last summer. Her and Daniel on their wedding day. Ashley and Brian at their housewarming party. She heard the front door open and close. Daniel's footsteps hesitated in the entryway. What are you doing? He asked, his voice uncertain. Megan didn't look up. Trying to figure out which memories are real and which ones were a lie. She held up a photo of the four of them at a New Year's party. Was it happening then? Were you two already sleeping together when this was taken? Daniel sighed heavily and sat on the couch, keeping his distance from her. His lip was swollen where Brian had hit him. Megan, I know you're hurt. Hurt. She finally looked at him, really looked at him. The man she had pledged her life to, whose body she knew as well as her own. Hurt is what I felt when your mother criticized my cooking at Thanksgiving. I don't even have a word for this. I never meant for any of this to happen, he said, running his hands through his hair. Ashley and we connected over something unexpected. I was helping her with designs for a client's home office, and we started talking about our own dreams, things we'd set aside. One thing led to another. Spare me the how we fell in love story. Megan cut him off. I don't care about the narrative you've created to justify betraying your wife and your friend. She stood up, scattering photos across the floor. What I want to know is how you could look me in the eye every day and lie. How you could watch me grieve my mother with Ashley by my side, knowing what you two were doing behind our backs. Daniel stood too, his face anguished. It wasn't just sex, Megan. If it were that simple, I could have stopped. We tried, believe me. So it's love, then? Megan laughed bitterly. That's worse. That means every I love you said to me was a lie.
No. I do love you, Meg.
I've always loved you. Just not enough. She wrapped her arms around herself. Not enough to be faithful. Not enough to be honest. Not enough to consider what this would do to me when I found out. Daniel took a step toward her. I know I've ruined everything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But please believe that hurting you was never what I wanted. Then what did you want, Daniel? Megan's voice rose. To have it all? Your wife at home, and your lover across the hall? How did you see this playing out long-term? He looked away, and in that moment, Megan saw the truth. You are going to leave me, she whispered. You and Ashley had a plan. Daniel didn't deny it. We were trying to figure out the right way, the right time. Neither of us wanted to cause more pain than necessary. How considerate of you. Megan felt her legs weaken and sat back down on the floor. When? After the holidays, he admitted. Ashley wanted to tell you both together, but I thought it would be better coming from each of us separately. A knock at the door interrupted them. Daniel moved to answer it, but Megan was faster. She opened the door to find Ashley standing there, eyes red and puffy from crying. I need to talk to you, Ashley said. Both of you. Megan considered slamming the door in her face, but stepped aside instead. Come in. We were just discussing your exit strategy. Ashley entered, keeping a careful distance from Daniel, who had gone pale at the sight of her. Brian's gone, she said, her voice cracking. He packed a bag and left. Wouldn't tell me where he's going. That's not my problem, Megan replied coldly. I know. Ashley's hands twisted together nervously. I just thought you should know. And she took a deep breath. I want to tell you both that I'm not going through with it. Any of it. Daniel stared at her. What are you talking about? This thing between us, it's over. It should have never started. Ashley turned to Megan, tears streaming freely now. You were my best friend. I betrayed you in the worst possible way, and I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. How noble of you to end it now that you've been caught, Megan said sarcastically. Should I applaud your integrity?
No.
You should hate me. I hate myself. Ashley wiped at her tears. But I want you to know that I'm moving out. I've called my sister in Phoenix. I'm going to stay with her while I figure things out. Daniel stepped forward. Ashley, wait. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, Ashley said firmly. What we did was unforgivable. We destroyed 2 marriages and hurt the people who trusted us most. I won't compound that by running away with you now. So, what, you're just leaving? After everything we planned? Daniel's voice held an edge of panic. We talked about starting over together. Plans made in secrecy, built on lies. Ashley shook her head. They were never going to lead to anything good. Megan watched this exchange with a strange sense of detachment, as if observing characters in a play. The betrayal still cut deep, but seeing Ashley reject Daniel, seeing the shock and hurt on his face, provided a small, cold comfort. Why are you telling us this? Megan asked. What do you want from me? Absolution. No, Ashley replied. I know that's not possible. I needed you to hear it from me. That I'm not taking him from you. Not that you'd want him now. She glanced at Daniel, then back to Megan. And I wanted to give you this. She pulled an envelope from her pocket and placed it on the coffee table. What is that? Daniel asked, staring at it. Evidence, Ashley said quietly. Every email, every text. A timeline of everything. Brian asked for it for the divorce, but I thought you might need it too, Megan. Megan stared at the envelope. You kept records of your affair? Not intentionally. But I never deleted anything. Ashley moved toward the door. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I won't bother either of you again. As she reached for the doorknob, Megan found her voice. Did you ever really care about me at all? Was any of it real? Ashley paused, her hand on the door. You were the best friend I ever had, she said, her voice breaking. That was real. I just wasn't worthy of your friendship. With that, she was gone, leaving Megan and Daniel in a silence heavy with the weight of everything broken between them. She can't just walk away, Daniel muttered, more to himself than to Megan. Not after everything. Isn't that exactly what you were planning to do to me? Megan asked. Walk away after the holidays? Daniel had no answer for that. Megan picked up the envelope Ashley had left. I want you to leave, she said. Tonight. Pack whatever you need. The rest can wait. Megan, please. We need to talk this through. No, we don't. She felt surprisingly calm. There's nothing left to say. You made your choice months ago. The only difference is, you don't get the fairy tale ending you planned. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, Daniel. That's not my problem anymore. She walked to their bedroom and closed the door behind her, leaning against it as the tears she had been holding back finally came. Through the door, she heard Daniel's movements, drawers opening, closet doors sliding, the zip of a suitcase. She listened as his footsteps crossed the living room, hesitated, then continued to the front door. The sound of it closing behind him had a terrible finality to it. Only then did Megan open the envelope Ashley had given her. Inside were printed copies of text messages, emails, even hotel receipts. The evidence of their betrayal laid out in black and white. Megan's hands trembled as she read through it, each page a fresh wound. A separate piece of paper caught her attention, a handwritten note from Ashley. I know this doesn't fix anything, but it's the only honest thing I can offer you now. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused. You deserved better from both of us. Megan crumpled the note in her fist, a fresh surge of anger washing over her. As if apologies could erase what they had done. As if sorry could rebuild the life that had been shattered. Her phone buzzed with a text. Brian, are you okay? I'm at the Baymont downtown if you need anything. Megan stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Were either of them okay? Would they ever be? I'm still standing, she typed back. You? His response came quickly. Barely. Could use a friend right now. Megan looked around the bedroom she had shared with Daniel, at the photographs on the dresser, the 2 robes hanging on the back of the door, the 2 pillows on the bed. Everything in pairs. Everything a reminder. Meet me at Callahan's in 30 minutes, she suggested. The bar was halfway between their apartment building and the hotel. See you there, Brian replied. Megan changed her clothes, splashed water on her face, and grabbed her keys. She didn't know what the future held, but tonight, she and Brian would face it together. Not as lovers, but as 2 people who understood each other's pain perfectly. 6 months later, Megan stood in the doorway of her new apartment, watching the movers carry in the last of her furniture. The place was smaller than the one she had shared with Daniel, but it was hers alone, a fresh start in a different neighborhood, away from the memories that had haunted every corner of Ridgewood Heights. The divorce had been finalized a month ago. Daniel hadn't fought her on anything, a guilt-driven generosity that had made the process quicker but no less painful. He had moved to Chicago for a new job, and according to their one brief conversation during the final paperwork signing, Ashley was still in Phoenix. Their grand love affair, built on the ruins of 2 marriages, hadn't survived the harsh light of reality. Megan's phone chimed with a text from Brian. Still on for dinner? I can pick you up at 7. She smiled as she typed back. Yes, but I'll meet you there. Need to finish unpacking. Her friendship with Brian had been an unexpected lifeline during the darkest months. They had started meeting weekly for coffee or drinks, comparing notes on divorce lawyers, venting about well-meaning but clueless friends, and gradually healing from the shared trauma of betrayal. There had been moments, a hand lingering too long, a look that carried too much weight, when the line between friendship and something more had blurred. But they had both recognized the danger in seeking comfort in each other that way. What they needed wasn't a new relationship built on the ashes of their failed marriages. It was time to rediscover who they were as individuals. As Megan unpacked her kitchen boxes, she found herself humming, something she hadn't done in months. The pain hadn't disappeared. It still ambushed her at unexpected moments. But it no longer consumed her entirely. Her phone rang, her mother's old friend Louise, checking in as she did every Sunday. "The place is coming together," Megan told her. "You should come see it next weekend." "I'd love that," Louise replied. "And how are you really?" Megan considered the question, looking around at the boxes still to be unpacked, the blank walls waiting for new photographs and memories. "I'm rebuilding," she said finally, "one day at a time." After they hung up, Megan opened the small box she had labeled personal. Inside was a framed photograph of her and Daniel on their wedding day. She had packed it impulsively, unable to throw it away despite everything. Now, looking at it, she felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness for what was lost, anger at how it ended, but also a strange sense of gratitude for the woman she had become through the ordeal. She placed the photograph back in the box and closed it. Maybe someday she would be ready to look at it again without pain. But not today.
Her doorbell rang.
Opening it, she found Brian standing there with a small potted plant in his hands. "I know I'm early," he said with a sheepish smile, "but I thought you might need help unpacking." Megan stepped aside to let him in. "It's just stuff," she said. "The real work is already done." Brian nodded, understanding what she meant. They had both survived the unimaginable, not just the betrayal, but the aftermath. The questioning of every memory, the rebuilding of trust in their own judgment, the learning to be alone again. "Nice place," he commented, looking around. "It feels like you." "That's the idea," Megan replied. "No compromises this time." They worked together for the next hour, unpacking kitchen items and arranging furniture. The ease of their interaction reminded Megan of the early days of their friendship, before Ashley and Daniel's affair had complicated everything. But there was a new depth to it now, a shared understanding that couldn't be explained to anyone who hadn't lived through what they had. As they prepared to leave for dinner, Brian paused at the door. "I got a job offer in Seattle last week," he said, watching her face carefully. "I'm thinking about taking it." Megan felt a pang of sadness, but nodded. "That's a great opportunity for you." "It would mean a fresh start," he continued. "New city, new people." "You deserve that," Megan said sincerely. Brian hesitated. "Before I decide, I wanted to ask, what are we doing, Meg?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibilities and risks. "We're healing," she answered finally, "and helping each other heal. And if I wanted more than that, eventually, I mean, not now, but someday." Megan thought about the storage room, about the moment she had locked the padlock and texted Brian. She thought about the months of pain and growth that had followed, about the person she was becoming on the other side of betrayal. "I think," she said carefully, "that we both need to become whole on our own before we could ever be anything together. And that might mean time apart." Brian nodded, his expression a mix of understanding and resignation. "Seattle it is, then." "For now," Megan added softly. "The future is unwritten." As they walked to the restaurant, Megan felt a weight lift from her shoulders. There were no guarantees in life. She had learned that lesson brutally. Love could turn to betrayal, trust could be shattered, and the people closest to you could inflict the deepest wounds. But she had also learned that endings could become beginnings, that strength could grow from devastation, that some locks, once broken, allowed you to escape rooms you never should have been trapped in to begin with. The storage room that had been the site of her greatest humiliation had also been the catalyst for her freedom. As painful as the journey had been, Megan wouldn't change it. It had brought her here, to this moment, this version of herself, this hard-won wisdom about what she would and wouldn't accept in her life going forward. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But tonight, walking beside her friend under a sky spilling stars like secrets, Megan felt something she had thought might never return.
Hope.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.